Hey everyone, and welcome back to Cruising with Matthew. Today I'm going to give you some hints and tips about doing a transatlantic crossing on Cunard Queen Mary 2. In May 2025, I ended up doing a full round-trip crossing, spending a total of 12 days at sea. In this video, I'll highlight my overall transatlantic experience, whilst also highlighting the differences between both the westbound and eastbound crossings. I really hope you find this video useful, and if you do, please like and subscribe as it's much appreciated. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Number 1. You're embarking on an iconic trip. Ever since I started cruising, I've always wanted to embark on a transatlantic crossing on QM2, as it gives you the chance to relive the golden age of ocean liner travel, a time when travelling by ship was the only way to cross the Atlantic, with liners like Queen Mary, Normandy and United States becoming household names and symbols of national pride before the advent of the jet age. Yet, even in today's fast-paced world, this piece of maritime history still endures on Queen Mary 2. She is the last ocean liner in service today and carries out a regular transatlantic service, sailing between Southampton and New York for the majority of the year. This accolade makes QM2 stand out from every other ship in service today, as she's purpose-built to handle the very worst the North Atlantic can throw at her, whilst ensuring a comfortable ride for those on board. Her interior spaces are wonderfully varied as well, so even if the weather outside isn't all that good, you still have countless numbers of bars, lounges and restaurants to relax in, with my favourite being these seats on deck 3L, as I loved watching the sea roll past. Number 2. You do a crossing, not a cruise. As unique as QM2 is, she's not the only ship to cross the Atlantic, with many cruise ships also offering transatlantic cruises in the shoulder seasons, typically sailing to Europe in springtime and then to places like the Caribbean in autumn. During these repositioning cruises, you'll often have several ports of call along the way, including places in the Azores, Canary Islands and Iberia. You still get long stretches of sea days, but the cruise itself typically spans about 2 weeks, and you're often sailing on a more southerly course where you're likely to get warmer weather and calmer seas. A crossing on QM2, on the other hand, has no ports of call and involves a full week at sea before arriving into New York or Southampton. She'll then spend the day alongside before doing the return journey. Both types of transatlantic certainly have their merits, but QM2 is the only ship to do a transatlantic crossing today, and although the naming seems somewhat arbitrary, it reflects a very different style of holiday, so it's well worth knowing the difference and deciding which suits you best. Number 3. Consider the direction of your crossing. QM2's transatlantics are split into eastbound crossings, sailing from New York to Southampton, and westbound, sailing from Southampton to New York. Unless you do both, it's important that you consider which leg suits you best. A westbound crossing is arguably the better value of holiday, as on 5 nights of your trip you get an extra hour in bed due to New York being 5 hours behind the UK. As a result, on these days, you actually get 25-hour days for the same amount of money. You also get to enjoy the incredible sailing into New York, which is probably the most impressive sailing I've ever done to date. The first highlight is sailing under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which occurs at around 5 AM. Now, I'd strongly recommend going high up onto QM2's top decks, as it's the most incredible thing, with everyone around us gasping in disbelief as we watched QM2's mast go under the bridge. Before long, you pass by the Statue of Liberty. I got quite emotional here, as I'd seen it in so many films and TV shows, but to see it in person was something else entirely. You also get the incredible skyline of Manhattan getting closer by the minute. Whilst QM2 docks in Brooklyn, not Manhattan itself, it still gives you some incredible views of the financial district and beyond. On the Eastbound crossing, you get to enjoy a sail away from New York, which is equally as stunning, with the added benefit of it being at a much more sociable hour and often during daylight, which gives you the best chance to see all the landmarks New York City has to offer. Sailing under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge is still really cool to watch as well, and seeing it in broad daylight somehow made it feel even more impressive. Due to time changes though, you do technically get less time on board during an eastbound crossing, as on 5 of the sea days you lose an hour to slowly bring you into UK time. This actually occurs at 12 noon, so you skip straight to 1 PM on those 5 days, which was a little confusing, but meant that you, and more importantly the crew, don't constantly lose an hour of sleep. They do account for this in terms of things like lunch, which would run quite late until 2:30, but it did feel like the eastbound crossing went by much quicker than our westbound crossing. Plus, sailing into Southampton, especially if you're a British cruiser, isn't exactly as impressive as sailing into New York. However, saying all that, if I was only doing one crossing, I'd likely do the eastbound, as I'm not a massive fan of flying, so I'd rather get it out the way and enjoy all the excitement of New York first before having a leisurely crossing back to the UK. It's very much down to personal preference and logistics, and I'd happily do either one of these again in a heartbeat. Number 4. The North Atlantic is hard to predict. Now, it goes without saying that when you're doing a transatlantic crossing, you're traversing an entire ocean, so the weather can change quite quickly throughout your trip. So, packing for all weathers is very much the order of the day. To give you an example, during our westbound crossing, it was quite cool and grey for the majority of the trip, and this seems to be the expectation on a crossing. Yet a week later, we were treated to blue skies and sun, with many people sunbathing on QM2's top decks, including my mum, who somehow managed to get a tan. However, even though the weather was quite calm on both crossings, we still had a few weather events. This included encountering some rather eerie fog banks off Newfoundland, as well as being caught in one of the biggest thunderstorms I've ever seen at sea. As for the sea state, there were moderate seas at times, although we barely felt a thing throughout the whole crossing. However, there's no way to guarantee which crossings will be calmer and which will encounter rougher weather. So if you're concerned about seasickness, I'd recommend buying some tablets and also booking a cabin as low down and midships as possible to mitigate the pitching you may feel in rougher seas. However, if you do encounter rough weather, you're on the best ship in the world to handle it, and I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. Number 5. Find the kennels on board. One of the many things that makes QM2 unique is the fact that she has kennels for both dogs and cats. These are located on deck 12 near the aft of the ship and are only available to book during transatlantic crossings, and from what we heard are often booked years in advance. There's both an indoor and outdoor area for pets to relax with their owners, and in the evenings they also open up the aft sun deck for them to properly stretch their legs. The kennel masters looking after them are like celebrities on board. They're super chatty as well, and are more than happy to talk to you about this unique role on board. Even if you're not an owner, you can always pop up here and say hi at the owner's discretion. It's such a quirky thing to see considering you're in the middle of the North Atlantic, but it's fantastic nonetheless. Number 6. You'll run out of time to do everything. Now, as much as I love my sea days, I was a little worried that by the end of the trip, I'd be very much done with being at sea. However, I didn't need to worry, as the days on board absolutely flew by. Cunard have been crossing the North Atlantic since 1840, so they know plenty of ways to keep you occupied during your days at sea. There's a packed programme, with events including exercise and dance classes, trivia, lectures, live music, production shows, classical concerts, deck games, and so much more. Although if you prefer, you can just ignore this programme entirely and enjoy the comforts of your cabin or QM2 herself. With her numerous pools, open deck spaces and lounges, we always found a cosy place to relax and finally get a chance to switch off from all the hustle and bustle of our busy lives back home. As we arrived back into Southampton 2 weeks later, we couldn't believe how quickly the sea days had passed. It was probably the most relaxing trip I've ever had, as there were no ports to rush off and explore or schedules to keep. The only negative we found was that when you disembark the ship, you crash back into reality with a resounding thud. Number 7. You may sail close to Titanic. Ever since learning about it at school, I've been fascinated by the history of Titanic, so I was really interested to see just how close QM2 sails to the wreck site. Now, it is something that will be mentioned in the captain's midday announcement on the day that QM2 is nearest, and for us, this was on the 5th day of our westbound crossing, and we passed relatively close, about 32 nautical miles at around 6 p.m. Personally, I found it incredibly moving, passing so close by on an ocean liner. However, you aren't guaranteed to be this close, so it's very much dependent on the track that you take. Number 8. Make the most of your time in New York. Whilst only relevant if you're doing a round-trip transatlantic, I thought it was worth discussing what happens if you're on board for both legs of the crossing whilst the ship is docked in New York. As soon as the ship is cleared by the port authority, passengers could start disembarking the ship from 7:15 before going through US Customs and then being able to explore New York independently. You still have to go through customs even if you're staying on board the ship as well, but they will call you once everyone else has gone through. Now, the all-aboard time for New York is 4 p.m, so you don't have masses of time to play with. If you're travelling under your own steam, they did point out a local ferry that takes you to Wall Street, but we went on a Cunard organised excursion for the day. The tour isn't cheap by any stretch, costing £95 per person, but it lasted 7.5 hours and really maximised the time we had to explore the city, with our first stop being in Central Park, where we enjoyed a walk along the lake, marvelling at this weirdly calm oasis in the middle of this bustling city. We also got a chance to visit the Rockefeller Center, with a highlight for us being able to go up to the top of the rock. Sadly, it was quite rainy and cloudy during our time up here, but the views were incredible all the same. Your lunch break is at Grand Central Station, which was so cool to see in person, although we couldn't believe this was nearly demolished in 1975, so we were certainly very thankful for Jackie Kennedy and her campaign to save it. Our final stop was at the 9/11 Memorial, which was such a moving and emotional place to visit. Seeing One World Trade Center nearby certainly spoke of the resilience of New Yorkers, and I really appreciated the chance to pay my respects at Ground Zero. Whilst it wasn't exactly an upbeat end to the tour, I felt that we saw as much as possible during our short time ashore. Therefore, whilst a decent expense, it's well worth considering if you're doing a round-trip crossing, as it packs a lot in. Overall, I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed our round-trip transatlantic crossing. Whilst it wasn't exactly planned, it was such a relaxing trip, and I'd happily do it again, as it's such an iconic trip on board a ship that's unlike any in service today. So there you have it, my hints and tips for taking a transatlantic on Cunard's Queen Mary 2, and I really hope you found it useful. If you want to know more about cruising with Matthew, do check out my other social media channels, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all doing well at the moment, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. So until the next time, this is Cruising with Matthew, and thank you so much for watching.